See. A man walks into a hospital in desperation to bridge the separation of a loved one in need. A woman races to the same floor of the same ward. She's running toward her loved one indeed. She's seen as white, he's seen as black. We know for sure they both love their mama. Writing exact measures are just stretches of projected perceptions. They become cordial on the road to humanity. Racial vanity vanishes, taken to extremes of mortality. Each feels the sting of the same sword. Everyone feels love, pain, joy, strain, birth, life, death. Start all again, one accord. The circle you can't run from. Best to enjoy and learn something. A father comes up in the early hours to make sure the fam eat. In the street he meet different peeps. Some hard workers, some professionals, some deadbeats. A virus to the very streets they keeps. But that man, that pops, gets his key props by staying in focus, riding the subway train in rain, snow, block hot, world's hocus. Does he have to opt to quit? Not if he got content of character. Woes, cries, and moans comprise the tones from zip codes, coaches, and country zones. Too much callous analysis of others' troubles end up boomeranging, reoccurring acidic aura bubbles. Mind your business becomes the cries of the wise, more or less the best way to survive. Pass the test to see the one day to the next alive. This race subject is complex, cause it really has little scientific context. When we were real young and pure, we didn't see or feel racism or war. We played on a playground with any color kid who was around. Found it hard to delineate or separate who good or bad by looking at this so-called race, mate. We didn't learn all of that until we could understand how the game is played, how the shade is laid. It's a strange change, but the world could step up. Watch how young children catch up before the TV set is the chance to twist, rearrange, and mess up the universal setup. Time to find the prime divine spirit and get up. It's about content and character.
Look in the mirror, do you hear a voice that make you see more clear? Look in the mirror.
Razor awareness is as sharp in a cotton ginsu within you. Many people tend to get into self-absorbed ways of seeing the world through. Your self-satisfying orb elevate by compensating, giving the creation the new stations of greatness. Intel used well can parry off hell. The beauty computes as the colors on the palettes give balance. Total blend lead to an avalanche, and one bends down to another's commands and whims. Art and God show their hands on two complementing energies, joining the dance to the cosmic rhythm of a funky created trance. It ain't about the planetary sour actor. This is mainly about your content or character.
Look in the mirror, do you hear a voice that make you see more clear? Look in the mirror.
Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome as people coming in And we're really happy to see everybody. This is our 5th annual Juneteenth gathering. And the theme for today, the cost of forgetting, how erasing Black history diminishes all of America. So today we're gathered in remembrance because forgetting comes at a cost. When Black history is erased, it's not just Black people who suffer. It's the soul of America that falters. The stories of resistance, brilliance, and faith that built this nation are too often silenced, buried, or rewritten. But without Black history, there is no honest American history. And without truth, there can be no healing. This morning is an offering of truth, of beauty, and of spirit. So we begin today by grounding ourselves to prepare for the voices, the vision, and the glory to come. And as Christina says in the chat, that's the first time we're showing and listening to the new Sundiata song for 2025 and our building community effort. So today, let's start with a short meditation that I have titled The Cost of Forgetting. So take a moment to arrive. Let the feeling of that energy just flow through your body. Now let your body settle. Let your breath deepen. Let your spirit rest. So maybe you want to close your eyes or just dim your vision, whatever makes you comfortable right now. Begin to inhale slowly through your nose and exhale gently through your mouth. One more deep breath in and then let it go. As you breathe, begin to notice your body. Notice any areas of openness or resistance. Let your awareness scan gently, like sunlight warming the surface of water. No need to fix anything. Just be present with yourself. This space we've created today is more than a program. It is a brave space. We will not always be comfortable, but we will be truthful. And together we will honor what deserves to be remembered. And we here breathe through discomfort. We will speak from the I. We listen with respect. We ground in our bodies and we stay connected to our hearts. Now I invite you to imagine a golden light, a soft, radiant glow entering through the crown of your head, filling your chest, your heart, your hands, your breath. This golden light is the presence of love, truth, and our ancestors. Let it move through you like warmth, and let it remind you, you are not alone. We are standing at the edge of something sacred, and what you are about to witness will open the soul of this moment. In just a few moments, you'll hear a powerful rendition of our Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it's going to be sung in her own style by the RJC's own Laurel Renee Taylor. Her voice carries history. Her voice carries beauty. Her voice carries the glory of those who came before us and the hope of those who walk beside us now. Let her offering settle into your heart. Let it prepare you for what's to come. Let it remind you why we gather, to remember, to restore, to rise. Take one more deep breath in. Inhale strength. Exhale presence. And now let us begin. And I am grateful to be able to call to the stage and Frank, if you will spotlight Laurel Renee Taylor singing Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat, have not a weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Whoa. So we all want to just let that settle. Feel that. Feel what that song means. Feel the times the song speaks of. And that we're grateful. That we're grateful that we're here today all together. Thank you, Renee. Thank you. So before we just rush on, if anybody would like to say a word, go ahead. Now's the time. Unmute yourself. That was, I felt it in my heart. I thank you.
Let me echo that, Renee. That was real, real nice. I like the way you went through the different chambers with the 3 different verses. You know, gave us a different chance to feel it in different emotions. That was fly.
Thank you.
That was very powerful. Thanks for me.
Sure.
I feel lucky we got 2 songs today.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Frank, anytime you're ready, we can start the recording. This is our own Farrell Saunders with a pre-recorded history of what the cost of forgetting, what America loses when we erased Black history.
Hello, everybody. My name is Farrah Saunders with the Racial Justice Collaborative, and thank you for attending our 5th Juneteenth event. What is the cost of forgetting? Black history is so intertwined with American history that it's completely incapable of being removed from the other without irreparably damaging the whole. Black history has been tethered to the wealth, the political will, and the cultural foundations of the United States ever since we first arrived in the country. And the history surrounding our circumstances, thusly, are just as foundational. A really important thing to remember about this concept is that historical memory is not passive, it is not automatic. People in the modern day are required to exalt the progress that came before in order to hold on to the gains that were made. Because if they're left to fall to the backdrop of the past, rather than carried into the future, they will be forgotten. These lessons need to be maintained, they need to be cherished, or they'll fade so severely that eventually they'll just be gone in their entirety, along with all the progress that came with them. The Black-led civil rights movement was one of the most important events in all of American history. It carved the path to the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, laws that now guard the dignity of women, of immigrants, the disabled, and the poor. To forget the struggles and circumstances that led to the granting of these rights is to risk losing them. Justice didn't suddenly appear one day or fall from the sky at random. It rose from the streets, from sit-ins and boycotts, and a decade of organized efforts. And we dishonor that legacy every time we look away from it. Justice was fought for, it was bled for, it was won through sheer determination. And when we erase the history of those struggles, we don't just dishonor the legacy, but we're endangering our future as well. The 14th and 15th Amendments, born of blood and fire, etched into law the sacred promise of equal citizenship, and not just for Black Americans, but for all Americans. These rights, which had paved the way to millions of future families being able to start new lives in the United States with dignity and with security, regardless of their race and regardless of the nation of their origin, only came about as a result of the Civil War, which was fought over the political battle between the abolition or the continuance of the enslaved status of Black people in the United States. To erase the Black history that gives context to why these rights exist is to weaken the history of our democracy itself, because this is such a foundational chapter of it. Someone cannot claim to love the freedoms of this country while disregarding the history of the people so tied to the context of how these freedoms came about in the first place. Black Americans contributed immensely to the construction of this country, in senses both literal and metaphorical, in fields and factories, on battlefields, both in war and in labor. Black unions were not footnotes, but were instead extremely historically important to the progress on the front of labor rights across racial lines. In situations where labor organizations excluded Black membership, Black Americans were forced to organize among themselves, forming their own labor groups to protect their workers when larger white labor unions excluded them. Despite the segregation, however, the contributions of Black labor unions in the late 1800s and turn of the century still greatly contributed to the broader causes of labor groups across all racial lines, as the power that these groups wielded benefited from class solidarity even when certain white labor groups were not willing to integrate racially. They still distantly benefited from the efforts that groups that they would not socialize with produced. Later on, however, towards the 1930s, various economic factors such as swells in labor demands for large-scale projects like FDR's new shipbuilding programs were so large in scale that some unions, choosing to remain racially segregated, was simply inefficient, as the limited pool for the workforce was unable to keep up with these larger demands. On the other hand, unions that did integrate racially in this era were better able to adapt to these new conditions and this new class solidarity between workers, easing the tensions between working class peoples of different races, only strengthened the labor union as a whole. Erasing this history is not just distortion, it's theft, and it leaves our understanding of American labor hollow, incomplete, and vulnerable in the modern day. While forgetting knowledge over generations may be passive, environments that purposefully speed up the process through intentional erasure are oftentimes intentionally orchestrated. These efforts prop up myths of American innocence while silencing centuries of truth struggled for by true patriots. But truth is not our enemy, it is our salvation. Without truth, there can be no justice. Without truth, there can be no healing. And without healing, we're a nation doomed to bleed the same old wounds. This is not an accident. From the eugenics movements of the early 1900s that used biased IQ tests to completely fabricated pseudoscience like phrenology to label Black children as inferior, to today's efforts to ban lessons on systemic racism or the histories of racism throughout countries, anti-Blackness is built into efforts to obfuscate the truth. But again, truth is not our enemy. It is the only foundation that can be used to build a common good. Without truth, there can be no justice. Without justice, no healing. Without healing, we remain trapped in the same cycles of harm again and again and again. Black culture has been the origin point of American cultural trends and phenomenon that have grown to be scores of the most beloved forms of art and traditions, not only all of our country, but of the entire world. It's fusion of African and European foods that were cooked. It's jazz, blues, rock, hip hop, all birthed from combinations of African and European musical stylings, traditions, and innovations to create new world-sweeping genres of music. It's in innovations that are central or ubiquitous, things that are so common and taken for granted in the modern day that countless people don't know where they came from. Blood banks, refrigerated trucks, the three-light traffic signal. To erase Black excellence is to erase America's greatest songs, some of its greatest minds, and some of its greatest triumphs. Yet, for a long time, there have been efforts, some quiet and some loud, to separate many of these cultural achievements from their originators, with varying levels of success depending on what you're looking at. But like it was said earlier, to forget is passive, And again, it takes active exaltation of these histories and of these truths in order to maintain them. Cultural trends tied to anti-Blackness reinforces to new immigrants that to be more American means to adopt these same prejudices, distancing themselves from Blackness or moving closer to whiteness in order to attempt to secure their place in a system built on exclusion. However, the doors opened by Black liberation struggles were not narrow. Immigration reform, gender equality, disability rights, all walked through these doors opened by Black resistance. We rise together or we fall separately. The struggles for freedom led by Black leaders in the United States has always made more freedom possible for everyone. So many movements for justice found their footing because Black liberation struggles paved the way historically. Because forgetting is a natural byproduct of apathy, it takes active effort to remember the truths of history. And there is strength, pride, and humility all in one, and remembering that the lessons of the past are one of our greatest inheritances. This is why we gather, for our 5th annual Juneteenth celebration, to honor the legacy of the Black experience in America. We refuse erasure, we embrace truth. All of this is American history. Thank you. My name is Farrah Saunders, and I really appreciate you coming to our 5th Juneteenth event.
Thank you, Farrah, for creating, and thank each of you for watching that powerful video. We've gathered today under the title, The Cost of Forgetting, What America Loses When We Erase Black History. But today is not just about memory, it's about identity. It's about the very soul of this nation. Because Black people are the soul of America. And that soul was forged in faith and fire. From the belly of slave ships to the heat of cotton fields, from Reconstruction to redlining, from Jim Crow to George Floyd, Black people held on to God. When the law called us subhuman, we turned to a higher law. When our families were torn apart, we prayed them back together in spirit. When the world said no way, we said, make a way, Lord. And we did. We made a way out of no way. That is the story of Black America, a people who created everything from nothing. We took scraps and made cuisine. We took sorrow and made spirituals. We took pain and made blues. We took the rhythm of resistance and made jazz, gospel, funk, soul, rhythm and blues, and hip hop. We transformed brush arbors into churches, dirt floors into sanctuaries, and shack communities into cultural capitals. Even when towns were burned to the ground, Black people rebuilt. We didn't just survive, we innovated. We redefined what it meant to live. Faith as the foundation of freedom. The Black church wasn't just a place of worship, it was a fortress. It was where enslaved people dreamed of liberation, where families reunited through song, where spirituals carried secret messages, where sermons on Moses ignited a theology of freedom, where Black people believed in a white Jesus, and that belief became so powerful, it led them out of slavery. In our hyper-secular society, America forgets how much Black faith sustained this country. But without that faith, there would be no America as we know it. Black brilliance as cultural engine. Black brilliance has always been a response to erasure, a way to speak, sing, cook, dance, pray, and create ourselves into existence. When the world said, "You're nothing," Black people said, "We are something. We are everything." Black youth continue this tradition today, taking the brokenness of this world and spinning it into rhythm, language, movement, fashion, art, activism. They don't just reflect culture, they drive it. Hip hop just didn't rise, it erupted. From street corners to global stages, it became a megaphone for truth and a blueprint for resistance. Spirituals weren't just songs, they were survival codes. Jazz wasn't just music, it was emotional alchemy. Black foodways weren't just meals, they were mastery, turning pig's feet and collard greens into celebration. We are the culture. We are the creativity. We are the continuation of a spiritual lineage that refuses to die. What we lose when we forget. To erase Black history is not just to lose a chapter, it's to lose the blueprint, the moral compass, the spiritual heartbeat, the cultural engine. We lose the models of resistance that didn't require violence. We lose the possibility of joy, even in the face of injustice. We lose the chance to become a multiracial democracy built on truth. To forget is not neutral, it is betrayal. Yet Black America is not deterred. We remember, even when others forget. Black joy is sacred. Black joy is not accidental. It is revolutionary. It is the sound of survival, the proof of the spirit. It says, you can take everything from us, but not our humanity, not our hope. Juneteenth is more than a date. It is a firm rhythm of remembrance and resistance, a reminder that faith still rises. Black people still rise. This is a call to reflection before the panel. In just a moment, members of the Racial Justice Collaborative will share what Black history means to them and what we risk when we forget. As you listen, I invite you to reflect. What parts of history have I been taught to overlook? What truths were silenced in my family, my education, my faith? How might I honor the faith, brilliance, and joy of Black people, not just in memory, but in action? Because we cannot dismantle white supremacy while clinging to historical amnesia. And we cannot be free until all of us are free. Let's listen now and then walk forward together. And now I invite our panel onto the stage. Frank, please begin the spotlight. Sundiata.
Yes, ma'am.
Christina.
Hello.
Laurel. Renee Taylor. Again, yes. And Frank Eason. So what we're going to do tonight, I'm introducing, you see the panelists, Renee, Christina, Sundiata, Frank. And each of the panelists is going to talk about two prompts. The two prompts are and Christina's dual rolling this. We're all multiple rolling. So Christina, at the right time, can you drop the questions into the chat? And that's because when we break up into small groups, the small groups are going to reflect, just mirror what we saw, what we do here. And you're going to answer, talking in small groups, these same questions. What does Black history mean to me? Emotionally, spiritually, educationally, and or intellectually? That's number one. The second question, what is one story or ancestor, famous or not, that I refuse to let be erased? And so I will facilitate the dialogue. And so let me start with any one of the members of the panel. If you all have your audio on, I will, and then each one will go in turn for about 1 minute each. So the first question for you, I'll just call them people, it's easier. Sundiata, what does Black history mean to you? Emotionally, spiritually, educationally, or intellectually?
Okay. To answer that question, I would say, to me, it is a personal reflection, and that is to understand that I am connecting with the terminology, the history, and the context of what we're speaking of, these people, or no matter what the terms are called for these people, but this is who we're speaking of. So what it means to me is to remember who they actually are in the scope of history, the time for the planet, who they are in significance to the land that I actually live on, and what have their contributions led to the life that I lead. With all of that, if I understand the history, then I can look in the mirror every day and be proud of what I look at. I don't have to, I won't find myself in certain traps that I think that self-hatred brings. If you are raised in this land and you believe everything that you've been taught in school and watched on television, both programming institutions. So I think that Black history and a good so-called Black history and a good understanding of what it actually was in truth, like you were saying, and what Farrell said in his piece, is that that truth makes the veil of deception and lies and hatred kind of go away, because you start to understand what's actually happening. And I've said this before, it's hard to disrespect your parents when you understand that is what it is. I'll say that. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I jump on that? I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
While it's fresh in my mind, I want to underscore those points where for me, it's a personal journey. And for a lot of the same reasons you said, Sundiata, that what we see and what we're led to believe isn't necessarily true. And in many instances, it has nothing to do with us. So for me, it's always this personal story and history of trying to figure out where I fit in and where I belong. And you see the greater history of the world, and it may not be reflective of you. So you're always trying to find out, well, where do I fit? Where was I? Where was my people? What were we doing? Because the history for Black people is not always front and center. So for me, it's always been personal. You learn something, you hear something that you didn't know, and you're like, man, how come I was never taught this at whatever school you happen to be at? And you go, well, it's a whole history that we may not know, which would greatly alter how we look at ourselves and how we look at the world. And so again, by design, I want you to be a certain way because it's better for me. But to counteract that, you always have to see what it is that you need to know and what it is that is beneficial for you and not necessarily the world at large.
Thank you. Thank you. Since I'm sort of calling on people, Renee, and then we'll hear from Christina.
For me, I will go the spiritual route. Being licensed in ministry, I started going to church with my cousin, and we did it because that's what they did on Sundays. And it was always the music, right? It was always the music that spoke to me. I had no idea what the preacher was saying, not a clue. But the music, the lyrics, the gospel always spoke to me to the point of tears. And it wasn't until fast forward, I found myself married to a pastor living in a small town in Louisiana, thinking, in Boston, the church is kind of progressive. We're doing this hip hop version of this, that, and the other. I was like, what do we need these hymnals for? Well, it wasn't until I started to sit and read and understand that the same God that we worship now is the same God my ancestors worshiped then. And their stories and their truths and their encouragement and their journeys and their disappointments were all sitting in this book of hymns. And I was like, wait. And I almost felt like I needed to make sure my youth there understood the power of a hymnal. Because like we talked about on one of the last programs we did, the secrets that are hidden in them, the stories that they tell, to me, that's saying my Blackness has outlasted doggone near everything. And whenever I get frustrated, whenever I think I can't do it, I look back on that and I know if they could do it, and I do not want to disappoint my ancestors. So I will continue to move forward, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how much I may be afraid, I will move forward.
I'm just gonna go to
Okay.
that was beautiful, Renee. You gave me the chills. I'm white, so Black history for me was not it's not a personal history. But it it wasn't something that I learned as a kid. I think if I thought about what I was actually taught about Black history in school, it was, the Cliff Notes, the basics. I think I would have said, oh, Black history was slavery. Like, I think that's maybe what I would have said when I was a kid. So I didn't really learn about Black history until I was an adult, on my own, when I chose to educate myself on Black history. And for me, it was a realization of white history. Oh, there is Black history. In the same way, whatever I learned was a lot of it mostly white history. And when you learn Black history, I'll say when I learned Black history, I learned about the terrorism of white supremacy and white history. And that was certainly a realization and a shame for at least a few years. I think I was just like ashamed of being white, but obviously that's not very helpful. So Black history taught me about just all the things that humans can endure, in the worst ways and the best ways. Black history taught me a lot. What else did I want to say? I think that's it. Just that that and also justice needs to be continually fought for. Equality didn't end at the Civil Rights Act. We're seeing why we need to fight now. So I think the more I learned about Black history, the more I realize I need to keep that fight going along with my Black peers and friends.
Christina, can I just say that right there, what you said as far as when you learned about our history, you learned about your history. That was kind of heavy. It's like you
That's true.
can't really separate them. It's like the sun and the moon, you know. They each kind of play off each other. So if you do one, you can't exclude the other if you want to truly understand one. That was
Yes.
the
Well, I think it's like there's history, and so people have this connotation of history, but not necessarily realizing that probably what they're referring to is white history, because it's typically the power structures that write the history. So, you know, if I'm gonna presuppose, but if I was white and I see history, I just think that's history, quote unquote. And then they say, well, this is Black history, and this is Latino history, and this is all these other subgenres of history. But in reality, you just have history, and everything is part of it. But the way that it's structured is this is history, big H. And this is what we mean because this is what we did. And you guys are history, little h. You know, yep, you were slaves, you were brought over here, you did this, you did that. And again, like when we were in school, you spend, what do we spend on Black history? A week or two in February? Maybe. And, you know, they run through it. And again, it was slavery. And that makes you feel like, wow, all I am is slavery. And so even in progressive Cambridge schools, it was still slavery, and that's your claim to fame from history unless you do the homework yourself. So we're not going to teach you, but if you want to learn your real history, here's some books and go learn and go educate yourself, because that's not part of big H history, because it's just not.
well, you still
Yeah.
got that week of roots. What are you complaining about?
We got roots, and we got, you know, that our chapter in the history book. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it all started off as a week, which is interesting. You know, with Carter G. Woodson, it started off as Negro History Week and then expanded to the month. And, you know, what we need to understand is that anything that we can fathom, no one can take away from us. So you can put it in the law, you can take it out of law. It don't matter. As long as we're doing it, we're going to know it.
Even Roots was about slavery.
Yeah.
That's
That,
what I'm saying.
that was the best.
That was a joke.
They just expanded it to show that slavery just didn't appear. There were people that were involved in the slave trade and the whole process of engaging enslavement. So we have a second question. So let's jump right into that. And I like the way we're doing now. Just do it. But I also like that each one of you had an opportunity to say something specific. So let's start with that. And who wants to be first? And then I'll tell you what the question is.
Everybody jump in.
I already
Christina
told.
said she wanted to be first.
Who wants to be first?
Christina said she wanted to go first.
Okay, Christina.
heard it
Okay.
I do want to go first.
Okay, that's good. Okay, the second question is, what is one story or ancestor, famous or not, that I refuse to let be erased? Story.
So for me, it's sort of a story and an ancestor. Someone that really, on my journey of learning about Black history, one of the things that I learned about was Black feminism. And I've considered myself a feminist basically since I moved out of my parents' house. But I just, it was feminism. I didn't think of it as racialized in any way. But once I started reading Bell Hooks, who's an author, feminist, philosopher, she's done a lot. She's a Black woman. She died a few years ago, so she's an ancestor now. But Bell Hooks and some other famous Black women feminists taught me that feminism, when it's in various ways, has been white feminism and only really benefiting white women, and actively excluding women of color. So Bell Hooks opened my eyes to that, but also taught me that feminism should be and is in its heart intersectional. And it's not just about Black and white women, it's about all women, it's about queer people. It's about religion. It's really inclusivity on all fronts. And bell hooks and Black feminism was my first introduction into that, and I really love that whole genre and anything bell hooks writes, and she's written a ton. She has written a ton. So that's my ancestor and story that I refuse to be let forgotten.
Okay, thank you. I think we see a pattern. So now we're going back the other direction. And so Renee.
I thought about this for a little bit, and mine isn't necessarily a person, it's more of a concept, or a family member. So it's Big Mama, right? It's when we look at the mother, the grandmother of our families who held it all together and the strength that she had. I mean, like what shows up in my head is a Black woman nursing a white person's child. There's a strength to that today we don't have to understand. But there is a humility, there is a spirituality, there is an unconditional love, there is showing love around a table when you may not know what to do. You can always go to Big Mama, Mima, whatever you call her. And I've realized as we've advanced, we are starting to lose that matriarch. And you can tell who the matriarch is when they pass away and the family falls apart, because that was the one person who held it all together. And in my own family, we have one aunt left. And me and my cousins are like, okay, now we are them. And we have to make sure that these kids know each other, that they know their history, that we continue to tell those stories and make sure the stories take root in such a way that no matter what they see on social media, no matter what somebody decides to walk up on them and tell them, they know who they are. They know the strength that comes with this name from this family tree, that we will not forget that. And so when I think about it, that's the piece that I want to make sure continues, that there is at least one strong, and I say female because I'm female, or male, presence in each family that passes that along. Because when you hear the story from the mouths of the people who experienced it, you could read a book, but there's a different connection when my grandmother used to, like my ex-husband's mother picked, hell, my ex-husband picked cotton. And I was like, what? I had friends in Louisiana who picked cotton. And I was like, I don't understand because I'm from the bubble of Cambridge. And so the reality of that, those truths now come with me, that when I'm in Louisiana, I sent a piece of cotton to my mother to send it to my niece and my nephew, because I need you to see what cotton coming out of a seed looks like. I need you to see the sharpness of the seed. And when you had to be able to pick this and not get blood on, I need you to know this. I need you to hold this and know that this is the strength that you come from. So that would be my person.
She should have went last. That said it all. Well, I guess
No. You're going last. You start. So Frank, and then you.
Okay.
Start thinking it up. It's going to be good. Oh, it's good.
Well said.
Okay.
All right. So for mine, I thought about it as well. And the first thing that jumped to my mind was John Henry. And again, I hadn't thought about him in so long. And I said, okay, well, I remember the fictional story of John Henry. He's going to drive the spike and beat the engine. So I did a little research. John Henry was a real man. It was based on a real human being that worked. He was a slave and he got his freedom. Then they caught him up in some petty larceny and they put him in jail. So he worked as a prisoner driving those spikes. So the Virginia there, I saw a picture, there's still the picture of the mountain where they went through. And the story is the railroad track was like, all right, well, we can't go around this mountain, so we're just going to plow through it. And apparently hundreds of people died because it was dangerous work. And there's all these unmarked graves in the front of where the train goes through. So, but I grew up in mythology, and I remember like my mother reading me Beowulf when I was a kid, and Thor and Zeus and all this stuff. And when I got old enough to read, it was comic books, and I was like, oh, Spider-Man, Superman, all of these fantastical characters. But it was John Henry for me that I thought was a fantastical character, but he actually was a real guy that really was like someone that looked like me and you could aspire towards as a young Black kid. And now, 50 whatever years later, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what real or fictional person would I want to remember? And that's the first person that popped into my head was John Henry from 50 something years ago. And it's like to have that kind of mark on me. And I've gone through all the superheroes and Greek mythology and all these other people. And it's still the first thing that popped in my head was a formerly enslaved spike driver that beat an engine and died of a heart attack. So, I mean, I think that kind of courage and strength and determination is something that is powerful enough that it sticks with me to this day. And I hadn't even thought about it. So that for me is who I would keep in my mind.
Wow. Thank you.
Well, Frank, that was one of my favorite stories too. I swear to God. Me and my mom just read that story, and I think I cried when he died at the end. I'll say it. But anyway, I wanted to just piggyback off of what Renee said. I did think about speaking about that motherly, my energy that came from my grandmother, Ozella, and been passed into my mother, Annie. But I thought that that was a little more personal. Of course, I love them both. The person I didn't want to forget, and I was fighting between my grandfather, Johnny, who was, the male of our family, but a man that was a little bit more politically important to me in my mind was the Honorable, well, I wouldn't call him Honorable, but Noble Drew Ali. And that's because his science that I've been studying for, I'd say, the last decade or so, maybe a couple of decades, it's just brought me to new understandings about this history thing, since we're talking about history. He brought in, when he started the Moorish Science Temple in 1913 in Newark, they started to deal with some hidden history that's been hidden from us to this very day about our actual presence and true history in this country and who we are. And the connection of the land on paper. He did something like that in 1928. You can look it up. He was murdered the next year, 1929. And I used to see pictures of all these Black history figures. My mother had pictures of them all around our house. But you would go to different things, you would see, kings and queens of the past and famous people. And you sometimes would see a picture of Noble Drew Ali, but I never knew much about him, and nobody I knew much about him. So when I got into his history and learning about him, and it just took me into another world, it made me understand how integral our people really are in this land in particular, connected to another land, but as indigenous. But I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now. But just check out Noble Drew Ali if you don't know about him. That's
Cindy, do you mind putting his name in the chat?
Noble Drew Ali? Sure.
Just, I don't know how to spell it.
Not to be confused with Muhammad Ali, but if you look at the history and of both people, you'll see a connection, very deep connection. So that's all I have to say about that.
I'm just letting the silence and see what happens. Okay, it must be that this is enough. of the panel. Thank you very much, Racial Justice Collaborative panel, for your heartfelt contributions and feelings of the people that and the ideas that hold meaning uppermost in your minds. And so we're at the point. Frank, are you ready? So you can. Oh, you don't have to take me. You don't have to put me. You don't have to put me in the spotlight. I'm not getting ready to talk. I'm just. Yes, thank you. That's better. Oh, there's Catherine. She somehow managed to get in. And so just so everybody knows, you have to get your tickets before. And so Frank, next time, just let the tickets in at like 2:00, because
I usually
sometimes.
do. I just
Okay.
wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention.
Okay. So anyway, we're happy that Catherine was able to get in. You have to get your ticket because we can't. I don't know how she got in, but I'll figure that out later. But here we are. So I'm glad you got a chance to see some of it. You missed Farrell's video. But now, Frank, can you send everybody to small groups? We're going to have very small groups so everybody can have a chance to talk. And Christina, did you put, I don't see the chat, so it's somewhere.
I'll paste it again.
Yeah, can you put
You
the
want
question?
Can you just maybe read it one more time
Okay, yeah.
so it's fresh on people's minds?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be word for word. You can, so here are the two questions, and do something like this in the group. What does Black history mean to me? It can be feelings, spirituality, it's something about your education, your intellect. And then the other, what is one story or ancestor, famous or not, that you refuse to forget? You refuse to let be erased. And now we have a bonus question. If you don't want those questions, here's another one. How has the erasure or distortion of Black history shown up in your education, your community, your workplace, or your life? The erasure or distortion, how's it shown up in your history? Do you see that? I mean, can you do that, Christina? Or
Yeah,
do you want?
just
Okay.
just edit.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you all for participating, and we're waiting with bated breath here to hear what happened or what. So I'm going to read some reflections and then seek volunteers, and we'll start a discussion in the large group. So I'm going to read questions, but you can talk about anything you want, of course. So the questions are, or the reflections are, what moved you? What moved you today? What moved you? And as it moved you, or at some point, what did you feel? What did you feel in body or spirit? And did someone's words awaken anything? And then finally, what promise will each of us make to live and uplift Black history daily? So, silence is just waiting for everybody.
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
So the thing that, a lot has moved me, but the thing I've been thinking about a lot under the Trump administration and this whole idea of all these countries and how the US is portrayed as, the wealthiest and the most powerful, the dollar is the currency, etc. There's a basis, a foundation, which Pharaoh went through, which is basically, when a country has free land and free labor for hundreds of years, they're going to become powerful. And I'm just talking about the US, but obviously we could look at the UK. And so it just reminds me of that erasure of the foundation of the country, and that everyone is, dealing with Trump like he's this toddler, and they got to take all the China away so he doesn't break it. It's horrifying to me, but that's what I think about all the time. And the second thing right now in this time I think about is this so-called nation of immigrants that everyone brings up, even progressive liberals. And it's not a nation of immigrants. I mean, it is, but it wasn't founded on that. It was founded on indigenous land and enslaved people. And so so that infuriates me. And I'm an immigration lawyer, and it infuriates me. And I bring it up every time, even immigration lawyers say it, and it confuses everybody. They don't want to talk about that, or they don't know enough to know about it. So there's a lot happening now that's not, I don't see it as history, but it's linked to the history, and it's all erased. The foundations of this, that powerful country that you guys are in. I'm in Canada right now, so. Anyway, that's from Farrell's presentation. That's what I was thinking about. So anyway.
Yes, I'll jump in with just to thanks everyone for so many amazing things. I have been thinking about something related to what Jordana I think just said, uh, and relates to the large discussion about, as Renee and I were talking about in the breakout room, what is this white history, and this concept of white history. And what I in one of my hats is I'm a university professor, and one of the things that I really think about is how so many of our key foundational terms are really come out of anti-blackness. So very terms like humanness or rights, or so many of the things that we think of as founding principles of a democracy really are so fully racialized from the beginning. And so even thinking of something like white nation, whatever a predominantly white nation is and its history, anti-blackness is there from the very possibility of conceiving that. So the histories are so intertwined. But the other thing I just really want to say quickly is I really resonated, Diane, with and Renee and I also talked about this, just the emphasis on creativity and joy, and how both our ancestors and then now at this particular moment, remembering that creativity is the vehicle we have of our resistance, is really important to me right now.
Thank you, Tom.
I was so moved by what so many people said. Diane, the stuff that you talked about, and I mean, and it's you and Farrow and Sundiata and El Renee, and there's it's not just what you said, but and Frank, there's a way of saying it. There's a there's a spirit behind it that is so compelling. And it just reminds me of so many years, starting in the 90s, where I met you, Diane, at World Work seminars, and hearing you and TC and John L. Johnson. And there's like, I've learned so much from like speaking up and speaking the truth, and yeah, there's like a passion behind it. And then the other thing, El Renee, when you were talking about gospel music, and it just reminded me that like the music that is the most important to me, that I turn on in emotional moments or spiritual moments, that just help me just cry and just let it all out, is Reverend James Cleveland, Somebody's Knocking, or Gospel at Colonus, or Aretha and Mavis Staples singing "Oh Happy Day" together. Like again and again, I just come back to those things, and they just fill me and let me just flow. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lane.
So I really have something very short to say. Just felt like everybody who spoke today and who has spoken, it just feels like the space is like a freed up, non-judgmental zone to talk about, topics that people define as difficult, and these may be uncomfortable and things like that. And to me, just the non-judgment in the space is the spirit that really captured me today.
Mm. Mm. Wow, thank you, Alan.
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of comes up a lot is what is the term? It might not be, it's not always comfortable, but it's a safe space. And I think, non-judgmental, but safe, where we can have conversations and we can have debates and dialogue, but it's all in the vein of love and understanding, and not anybody judging or putting their perspective on someone else. We genuinely want to hear what people have to say, because that's the only way that you can really build any kind of foundation, is if you speak and then listen, and really listen to what someone's saying, not just pause until you go back to speak again. So, this arena that we're in is designed for that, where it's not always comfortable, because someone may challenge you on something, or you may say something and then realize it. And so there is uncomfort, but that's also where that growth happens as well. So it's important that we be that, and I'm glad that you see that, Alan. I appreciate that.
I'll jump in
Okay,
to tag along with Alan and Frank. When we were going over this a couple of days ago, when we were trying to figure out what questions were going to go in the chat and the panel was going to talk about, and one of those questions, and I'm going to screw it up, but it was about like, how do you take Black history with you, like every day, to your work, to your job? And we were trying to figure out if that's, well, should we drop that in one of the breakout sessions? And I was like, well, if we have people who are white in a breakout session, what does that look like? And Christina was like, she said, you know what? I can talk about that because I've been exposed. And I think, and so that made me feel a little uncomfortable. Like, you know what? Yeah. And so while there's several points to this, that I think is one of the biggest points, is exposure. We tend to be afraid of what we do not know. We do not want to talk about what other people have called taboo, and this is exposure. And the fact that she was like, I could talk about it all day because this is what I've been exposed to. I was like, right on. Yeah. Okay. And so, Christina, like, true heart emoji to you, man. This is what this is all about. And it's not, yes, we're talking about Black topics and issues, but it's not, I don't think it'll ever be in a way that, unless somebody comes from way, way, way out in left field and we have to kind of reel them back in, I don't think this space will ever be a space where someone cannot come and say, you know what, I didn't know. And we'd be like, well, you should have. No, you didn't know, but now you do. So the question is, now that you know, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep it to yourself? Are you going to share it with somebody else? That is what this is all about. And so I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy that Christina's on the team. And she's like, yep, I can do it. And so I'm like, cool. All right. And so just like Christina, you guys all can do this because you've been hanging out with us for over an hour and you've been exposed. So yeah, loving it. Loving it.
Thanks, Renee. Love right back. I do want to clarify though. I don't feel Black struggle and joy. It was Black struggle and joy. That's what we were talking about. And I don't obviously feel that directly, but I've been exposed and I care about it deeply for different reasons. And that has just made me want to keep learning and keep connecting and just keep it going, But thank you for that. That was very sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Renee. I have to bring up again that singing, Renee, the song that you sang was so compelling, or I can't think of a better word. So strong, so heart stirring. It was. Frank and I talked about it. We weren't in a breakout group, and so we were talking about we were talking about it, and we said rare, rare it is to be in a place where somebody is in person. Well, say it's funny. We feel like we're in person, but singing, but it's not like composed on a computer or anything. It was not. It wasn't recorded. It was you singing, and I got a chance to hear you, and you started out, and then it was a crescendo. You just kept the stanzas. You kept getting stronger and stronger until you got to the blood of the slaughtered. I said, "This is amazing." So thank you. Thank everybody.
Thank you for asking me. It's been interesting. Like when we talked, it's like, okay, so we all kind of know the first stanza, right? And then if you're ever in a situation where you hear the Black Nasser, it's like that's kind of this by the second stanza, and by the third, it's like total silence because everyone's like, what's that? And so looking at the lyrics at where I'm at now, at this age, they ring very different. And I think that's one of the things I love about music is music that doesn't get lost in all the technology of it, where you hear the lyrics. And we had talked about Senyata's track because it is hip hop R&B-ish, where you hear the tracks. So many times you just hear that hook, but you don't hear the lyrics. And the power is in what someone is, it's their story that they're telling you. And so this story just reminds me that I did not get to this point easily. And I stand on the shoulders of individuals who went through stuff I pray I never have to experience. But that doesn't mean that I just, I mean, when it talks about a dream that's unborn dying, it hasn't even gotten the chance to live. I am that dream. We are those dreams. And so we have to do something with it. That's how we honor our ancestors, regardless of what color you are. That is how you honor your past, by doing something with the time and the life that you've been given and the gifts that you have, because we all have them, whatever they may be. There's no small gift. There is no wrong gift. It is your gift for you to give to the world to help make this place a better place and to love on someone in the process.
Oh,
Wow.
okay. That's what I'm talking about. Can I add this a little bit? I was going to say that somebody mentioned listening to each other. I think it might have been Frank. Listen to each other and not being so quick to just be on what I got to say or what I'm thinking about. Let's hear what the next people are saying. Think about what they're saying, and then we can actually have a conversation. So during this thing, I was listening to Pharaoh, and one of the things he was talking about was truth is salvation. And he was saying that, and that's something that you read about in the Bible, depending on what your religion is. And it just seems to be a general thing around the world that if you deal in truth, you're closer to some form of divine or divinity, right? There was another thing that he said. He said, if you are not in line with the truth, then you're vulnerable. Everyone is vulnerable to the evils that'll come from that, you know? And there was an old quote that says, the axe forgets what the tree remembers.
Mm.
That's the whole thing about our plight here. You know what I mean? And Christina's point earlier about these plights being intimately intertwined with each other. To understand one is to understand the other, understanding they both are the same. It all comes together. So last thing I'll say is at the beginning of my song, I was talking about a man and a woman who were both in a hospital running towards an emergency room because they both had, their mothers were both sick. And that was a real story from my life. And there was a European woman who heard that her mother was sick And my mother was sick, and I came into Mississippi. She came in from Alabama or something like that, and she stayed at the hospital for like 2 weeks, and I was going back and forth. And so we became friends kind of in that experience. And, you know, at the beginning, we probably would walk by each other and not said anything. But when it was over, my mother survived and hers did not. And I felt really, really bad, you know what I mean? But I found that we both were on our way to humanity by understanding the mortality that we all face.
Thank you. I want to pull Frank in because he has to leave. And so after he's finished, the time is over. We can stay if people want to continue, but you can also leave. So Frank, go ahead.
Okay, mine's quick. So I just want to thank everybody, of course, for coming. I always say lots to do on a Saturday besides sit in a sweaty hot room and virtually interact with each other. But I'm so happy that you all came and shared this with us because it was a great session. Our next event is July 9th. So this is a pop-up, and the pop-ups are smaller, more personal events where there's a lot more chance for dialogue between individuals. So it's not a presentation, there's a topic. And this one is Intro to RJC, Let's Talk About Race. So if you don't know, kind of the germination of the RJC was this Let's Talk About Race program where people would just come on and talk about race. And the first thing, you know, white folks would go, I don't have a race. And of course you do. And what are you? And, you know, we're literally, you're just talking about yourself and how you identify racially. I don't have a race. Well, what do you have? That's race. And it's like, oh, I guess I do. So these introductory courses are for people that are just learning, or if you want to brush up on some things, they're very good for the beginners. And also we want some of the seasoned folks to come in because they're the model for that. So if I don't know anything, I'm scared to death, but I'm going to show up. And then I have somebody there that has already done it, and they kind of jump in there and they model what I'm supposed to do. That helps pull them along. So we invite everybody, but the nucleus is for new folks that are just now going to discover that they do have a race, and it is within them to talk about it, as scary as it might be. So that's going to be Wednesday, July 9th at 7 p.m. So they're just 1 hour, informal, come in, we talk, we go home virtually. So that's it. Thank you all for coming.
Frank,
but
what,
those are going to be, that's a series, probably quarterly. So, but the first one is July 9th.
July 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Lane.
Yeah.
would it be okay to just mention the September thing too?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Lane, go ahead, please.
So in September, there's going to be an event. Yasmin Rubich, who's a Black South African woman, and I wrote a chapter together in a book called On Becoming a Racially Sensitive Therapist. And the chapter is called Racial Harm in Helping Relationships and an Uncommon Journey Toward Repair. And we wrote it together because we used to be in a helping relationship together, and I was the helper and she was the helped, and you can imagine who did the harm in that relationship. And years later, I was asked to write about white defensiveness in helping relationships, and I thought, how could I possibly do that? That thing is still unrepaired. And anyway, I went back and we were working on repair, and we wrote about that whole journey. So we're going to be doing an event together about that, co-hosted by the Racial Justice Collaborative and the Process Work Institute.
Is there a specific date in September or not yet?
September 20th. Yeah, and it's going to be at the same time as this one.
We'll send out the link via email when we have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There'll be information will start to go out.
Sorry, that was such a long explanation.
No, that wasn't.
No.
A good one.
I will be there. That's going to be a good one. Lane.
Okay.
Congratulations, Lane.
Thanks.
So we do have some other things we are doing. They're just in the, they're in the early stages, so we haven't created the, so, but Elaine has, so you heard that one, and it has a date. You'll learn more, information will come to you because you came through Eventbrite. Eventbrite will send out things, or we will, through the Racial Justice Collaborative. And I want to thank Christina. She's the force behind the newsletter. We send her stuff and she finds the right time and the way to send it out. So thank you, Christina. Thank everybody. And so